Donald Trump has made headlines again today for yet another despicable act. He has been accused of calling dead World War I Marines, quote, losers and suckers. Now, before we pass any judgment, let me lay out the entire situation that we know of as time has passed within the past 2 days. The Atlantic recently published an article that described how when Trump was in France and someone proposed the idea of visiting a graveyard of World War I soldiers, he said that he didn't want to go, saying, quote, why would I want to go to that cemetery? It's filled with losers. He also said that the 1,800 Marines who lost their lives in the battle at Belleau Wood in France were, quote-unquote, suckers for getting killed. Trump was also quoted to ask, who were the good guys in the war, in reference to the Great War or World War I. And as everyone knows, the good guys were the Allied forces. That's basic knowledge of history. Another key piece of the story has to do with now past Senator, veteran John McCain. John McCain fought dutifully in the Vietnam War and was held as a prisoner and tortured for 5 years by the Vietnamese. I don't want to get too far detailed on what exactly this torture looked like, but being extremely terse and gathering all the knowledge I know of this torture, they were worse than death to many who were victims of this torture. When speaking about McCain on the campaign trail in 2015, Trump said, and I quote, he's not a war hero, we like people who weren't captured.
He's a war hero because he was captured. I like people that weren't captured, okay? I hate to tell you. Do you agree with that? He's a war hero because he was captured.
It's hard to put the scale of those words into perspective without explaining what John McCain did throughout his life. However, I literally don't even have to do that. The simple fact that Trump said this about a captured and honored soldier and senator speaks more volumes on this issue than I ever could. And a personal note in this story comes in right now. John McCain has been one of the most influential people on my political views for two main reasons. Neither have to do with actual political philosophy because I disagree with him on a lot of points. But the thing that did influence me in politics was the way the man conducted himself. To start, the man ran against President Barack Obama in 2008 for president. In a town hall he gave, a lady was asking McCain a question and referred to Obama as a, quote, Arab. Instead of glancing over casual racism like Trump does at his own rallies today, McCain called the lady out for it, taking the mic out of her hand and saying this.
And he's an Arab. He is not. No?
No, ma'am. He's a decent family man, citizen that I just happen to have disagreements with on fundamental issues, and that's what this campaign is all about. He's not. Thank you. Thank you.
The amount of respect that this man gained from me and many other Americans for keeping his moral intact rather than riling up the crowd is more than many people watching would understand. I need everyone to keep in mind that for a majority of my time as a kid interested in politics, Trump has been president. I haven't seen a president or even a front-runner candidate with morals before. The second thing McCain has done to earn my respect was his pivotal vote on Obamacare shortly before he passed. If you don't know the legendary story that took place on the Senate floor, the Republican Party was trying to get the Obamacare Act repealed because of their belief that the healthcare sector should be as privatized as possible. And the vote came down to the wire, and there was a tie between the Democrats and the Republicans, and there was one person who needed to vote to see what would happen with Obamacare. And this man, of course, was John McCain. McCain walked in, spoke to a few people for a few minutes, and gave his vote. And since words can't well describe what happened, I'll just play a clip of it.
Sorry, yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Peters. Mr. Portman. Mr. Reed.
Thank you.
Mr. Peters. Mr. Portman.
McCain, in some of his last moments on this earth, went against the partisan grain and made the vote he knew would be better for the country as a whole at the end of the day, and not for those who just wanted to profit off of us. Anyways, today's story isn't about the disrespected hero John McCain. It's about the 1,800 disrespected Navy veterans who died at Belleau Wood. This story has been making the rounds in political discussions recently because the Trump administration vehemently denies the allegation regardless of 4 other news stations corroborating the story that he called these dead Marines, quote unquote, suckers and losers. These corroborating networks are The Atlantic, the Associated Press, CNN, and wait for it, Fox News. That's right, one of the most right-wing news networks on air corroborated the story against Trump. And this wasn't from a no-name reporter either, just trying to make their way into the game. It was from Jennifer Griffin, who is a well-known and well-respected reporter in Washington who Trump has hated since the beginning of his presidency because of her reporting of objective facts without bias and propaganda. At first, the story looked like another smear on Trump, just like Russiagate. However, throughout the course of the past 2 days, it seems like this story may actually be true. The Associated Press said that Trump's actions match well with what Trump has been like throughout his presidency. A man who lacks empathy, and a man who doesn't understand why people love their country and the people in it in the first place. I, again, don't have to explain why that is simply the wrong thing to think for a sitting president, and why that is clearly one of the worst traits that our president possesses. To give my opinion on all this, I think that there is a far bigger issue at hand in America today. The reason I say there's an issue is because on Twitter, there were people on both the left and the right justifying what Trump said. They said that America has historically been a problem all around the world in places such as the Middle East, Europe, Asia, and South America, and Africa. Basically everywhere else in the world. They said that because America has been such an interventionist country and troops have actively signed up to fight for our military, they are in fact suckers. I believe this to be one of the most misguided and stupid things you can say about the situation. To start, in the First World War, which is when these Marines died that we speak of, people didn't think of America as an interventionist country because it simply wasn't. On top of that, the people who fought in Belleau Wood were fighting alongside the French. They were helping the Allied forces. They were the good guys. It has been the American way to help thy neighbor since the founding of this country. And think what you might about these morals in today's America, but in the 1800s and early 1900s, this country still stood for those values. To even consider that these soldiers who laid down their lives for another country's safety are suckers is a despicable thing to think. I spoke a lot about John McCain in this video for a good reason as well. It ties into the idea that Trump simply doesn't care about those who are willing to give their lives for this God-forsaken country. He still doesn't seem to care about the death of 180,000 who died from COVID, but we'll cover this mind-bogglingly stupid issue tomorrow. The disrespect that Trump has shown to those who died for and because of our country shows just how little he cares about you and me, the average American. So I want to pose a question, not only to Trump, not only to his supporters, but those who stand by him in disrespecting our soldiers. Do you know what stability is? Do you understand why our country is a global superpower and not a huge landmass that has no wealth? Do you? It's because of the soldiers you choose to disrespect. Like I said before, think what you might about us intervening in the Middle East and Vietnam. Those interventions came after the First and Second World War. But when the world was on the brink of collapse, instead of patiently watching, America came in and saved it. And then, when the entire world faced occupation from Nazi Germany, Japan, and Italy, America came in and saved it again. To me, no matter who's in charge of our country, no matter what issues we have among ourselves, I will never disrespect those who died in the fight for humanity. I will never disrespect those who left their family at an age no more than 2 years more than mine. I'm 15 years old. Some of them were 17 years old. To fight and die for the greater good. To imagine how much these people gave up to fight for you and me to be here today is immaculate, and I will never stand with you in defaming the soldiers in these wars. And if you want to question the ethics and morals of Vietnam and Middle Eastern intervention, I have no problem with that. That's free reign. But again, even in these wars, the individual soldier doesn't deserve an ounce of disrespect. If you still want to spit on their graves, I want you to imagine dying for the greater good of the world and see how it impacts you when the president and people from all around the country join together to try and drag your name and those who died beside you through the mud. It's reprehensible. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.